Good morning. Today is Thursday, the 22nd day of Cheshvan, and we continue in chapter 29 in Igeret Hakodesh. The Alter Rebbe is talking about the mitzvahs that create garments for the soul. The soul has 613 parts, and each part is connected with a mitzvah, and each mitzvah creates a garment for the soul. And what the garments do is that the neshama should be able to connect and appreciate and enjoy the pleasantness of God. Being that a neshama, and every part of the neshama, is a created being, although it originates from the very essence of God, but it's still a created being, and therefore it would not be able to connect and to enjoy, to appreciate the godliness unless, because it's finite by definition, and meaning it's compared to the godliness, which is completely infinite. In order to be able to enjoy, like it says in the GAN, to enjoy and not to be completely nullified, it needs to have a garment. The garment is something that comes from Hashem himself, from the will of Hashem, as we explained yesterday, which is above everything. Therefore, once you have the garment, the neshama is able to enjoy and to appreciate the greatness and the infinite pleasantness of the presence of God. And we explained yesterday how the mitzvahs are like 620 pillars. And we said that the pillars, each pillar is like something that connects the ceiling and the floor. But unlike the pillar, what we used to speak about, a pillar is supporting the ceiling, but here the pillar works both ways. It is also to hold up the floor. And what it means is that the mitzvahs is rooted in a very, very top, which is the will of God. And ultimately, it holds up the bottom. It's connected only with the bottom. What is the bottom? The bottom is the very lowest level, which is action. The ultimate will of Hashem is the very action of the mitzvahs. Simple action. So the Alter Rebbe focused so much on the fact that every mitzvah is connected with action. And even the mitzvahs that are connected with speech is also like action, because movement of the lips is considered action. And even the mitzvahs that are connected, you do them with the thoughts and emotions and feeling, like loving Hashem, fearing of Hashem, still it is connected with a physical person that has the ability to love other things, worldly, material things. So ultimately what we see, and when is it that you have the ability to think and have the choice and doing the right thing and thinking and loving and feeling the right things, is only when the person is in a physical body. When you're not in the body, when the neshama by itself, it doesn't have any other choice but to connect to spirituality. When there's a person in a physical body, he has then the option to do the right thing or the wrong thing. And when he chooses the right thing, he connects with the mitzvah. And this is why the mitzvah is the pillar that connects to the very bottom. In addition to that, we said that the pillars that the mitzvahs create are hollow pillars, meaning they become like a garment that envelops the person, envelops the neshama, and through this pillar, the neshama is able to climb up to the highest level of the will of Hashem, the Ratzon HaElyon. And Alter Rebbe continues in today's lesson. He brings from the Zohar what this says, that the mitzvahs become like a garment to be able to see God. But then he goes in also more into details to explain that there is different levels of Gan Eden. There is the higher Gan Eden, and there is the lower Gan Eden. Gan Eden being the Garden of Eden, heaven. And he's going to explain also the fact that it says that the lower Gan Eden, the mitzvahs, the physical mitzvahs, create a garment in the lower Gan Eden. But the higher Gan Eden, over there, the garments are created from the thoughts. From when a person does a mitzvah with the proper thoughts, with the proper concentration, proper intention, that creates a garment for the higher level of Gan Eden. So it seems like that this is not like what we said until now, that the main thing is the action. So the Alter Rebbe is going to explain that it's not so, that even in the higher Gan Eden, even when we're talking about the thoughts, ultimately, the thoughts is part of the will of Hashem in the mitzvah, which means it's a thought by itself is nothing. A thought that comes from an action mitzvah, that's what creates the garment to the higher Gan Eden. So let's look inside the way the Alter Rebbe explains this. V'zeu shekasuv b'zoyar HaKodesh parshas Pekudei. This is the meaning of the statement in the sacred Zoyar parshas Pekudei. Daf Reish Chavtes Amud Beis. The inun oivdim tovim, the Ovid Barnash, mashche min hoiro the ziva ilo'o levusha. It says that the good deeds, the mitzvahs, which man does, elicits a garment from the light of the supernal splendor. What is the supernal splendor? We spoke about it yesterday. It's called the keser, the crown, which is above the intellect. And they behold the pleasantness of God. And also, as the Zohar concludes, they experience the pleasurable thirst, the pnimius of the Kesel. So that's what we explained yesterday in length. You have the pleasurable thirst, you have the pleasantness of God, that the neshama is able to enjoy the godliness, and have the thirst to see even greater, higher and higher. So here is the quote from the Zohar, what the Alter Rebbe explained in this whole chapter, what it means. That the mitzvahs, the physical mitzvahs, they form the garments for the soul, and thereby the soul is able to enjoy the pleasantness of Hashem. Now the Alter Rebbe is asking, but wait a second. Though there, the Zohar speaks of the lower Gan Eden, where the garments derive from the truly practical commandments. In the lower Gan Eden, the garments come from the practical mitzvahs. Aval began Eden elyon, alavushim heim mirausa vekavona de liba de iraise utzloisa kemeshakasu v'zoyasham. But in the upper Gan Eden, the garments derive from the love and devotion of the heart, with respect to Torah and prayer, as stated in the Zohar. So it seems like the garments to the higher level is not from the action, but from the devotion, from the heart, from the thoughts, the concentration, and so on. So the Alter Rebbe explains, no, that the thoughts itself is only thoughts from actual mitzvahs, and therefore it's part of it. So he says, however, he says, this devotion from whence the garments derive, they refer to the devotion of one's occupation with Torah for its own sake, out of one's love of God. Mitzvahs Talmud Torah. Now, what is so it's devotion of learning Torah for the proper sake. And what is the learning of the Torah? The learning of the Torah itself is considered an actual practical mitzvahs, part of the mitzvahs that involve action. Why? And he says, mitzvahs Talmud Torah, GAN ken michlal mitzvahs ma'isi, is the commandment of to study Torah also belongs to the class of practical commandments. Why? The akimas sfasav have maisa, because the movement of one's lips when you speak, this is regarded as an act. That's a statement in the Talmud. The statement, by the way, is the Talmud is discussing about the mitzvah that says lo yisach shoym shoy bedishay. You're not allowed to block an ox when he's working in the field and plowing the field. You're not allowed to shut his mouth, put something to it so he could not eat, because it's suffering for the animal. And so the Torah says that if a person puts the thing that blocks the mouth, is violating the mitzvah. And then the Gemara discusses, what if it doesn't really put something in the mouth, but every time the ox tries to eat, you scream at the ox. You scare him away with words. So there's a discussion whether this is considered an act of violating, because the mitzvah, a law, it has to involve an act in order to be punishable. If there's no act, it's not punishable. And Rabbi Yochanan says there that akimas fasav avemaisa, when you move your lips and you scream at the ox, that is considered action, the movement of the lips. In any case, from this, the Alter Rebbe derives that every time, also when you study the Torah, it is an actual mitzvah. You move the lips, it is action. So therefore, again, Alter Rebbe says here that even when you have the kavana that creates the higher garments to the higher Gan Eden, it is still a kavana, the concentration and the meditation of the actual mitzvahs. That's what he says. The akimas the movement of the one's lips is regarded as an act. Vehiru lav kedibu dame. And meditation does not count as speech. Thus one does not discharge his duties by meditation alone. When you learn, you have to utter the words. And the same thing is also says by prayer. The same applies to prayer here too. One must actually articulate the words. You don't just scan the words when you pray. You're supposed to say the words, utter the words, even to hear your own words. You don't have to scream, but you have to hear your own words. So therefore, he says it, and this is ultimately it is the action of the mitzvahs. Even the kavana is connected with the kavana in the action of the mitzvahs. And in addition to that, says the Alter Rebbe, and certainly so, he says, considering that the superiority of devotion, the kavana, over speech and action, inasmuch as devotion can create garments for the soul in the upper Gan Eden, but this is not due to its own merits. It's not due to its own merits of the intention. It is because of the radiance from the supreme will. What does it mean? The kavana, the intent that a person has, allows of more. The deeper intent you have, the more revelation of godly will that exists. But intention itself, without the action, is like they say, it's like the wing without the bird. They say that says in the Tanya earlier, the Alter Rebbe brings that when you have that the emotions, the feelings of the mitzvahs, they are like bring the wings to the bird. And if you do mitzvah without the kavanah, it's like the mitzvah does not have wings; it cannot go up. But if you have the kavana without the mitzvah, you have the wings without the bird. So what's more important? As explained in length in Likutei Amarim, the first part of the Tanya, chapter 38. That's what Alter Rebbe explains it. So ultimately what we come from here, which this is the end of today's year, is the idea that the mitzvahs, mitzvah of action, they carry with them the godly light. They carry with them, they create the garments for the soul, and they bring the light of the ultimate, the highest light to the person itself, and they allow the neshama to go up and enjoy the benefit of the Gan Eden, the lower Gan Eden, the higher Gan Eden. There's a story in the Talmud about one of the people, the sages in the Talmud, I believe it was, and he had this once he had some kind of a weakness, and he went in a place and almost went to commit a sin with a woman, and then all of a sudden his tzitzis, the tzitzis that he was wearing, flew and blew on his face, and it hit his face, and he like shook out of this situation, and he said, "No, I can't do it. I cannot." And the woman told him, "What do you mean? What happened?" And he told her that, this is I cannot do it. There's the mitzvahs, the commandment of Hashem, and he left. And she was so impressed how something like this can stop a person and control his desires, his urges. And she decided, and she gave away all of her money, and she decided to go and convert, to realize that this is the Judaism, that this is something that is able to control the person from doing not good things. And ultimately, the Gemara says that she ended up marrying that person. The Gemara says those sheets that she prepared in a forbidden way, she prepared them in a permissible way. And of course, what this tells you is the mitzvahs, the power of the mitzvahs, the light that there is in the mitzvah, in the actual mitzvahs of action, which is the pillar, as the Rebbe says, from the top to the bottom. This in the mitzvah itself has it, whether you understand it or not. I remember also there was once the story with the Rebbe. There was an individual that came to the Rebbe. It was I don't remember who it was, but it was a very high position, and the Rebbe asked him to do one thing. The Rebbe always got the people. He tried to get people to get closer to Yiddishkeit and mitzvahs. So the Rebbe asked him if he can do him a favor and put on tzitzis under his garment. Nobody, yeah, sure, why not? Nobody sees it. Put on tzitzis. And once he put on the tzitzis, as he says, tells the story, ultimately it led him to learn more, to do more, and he became an observant Jew. And that came only from wearing a tzitzis. So the tzitzis has in it the godly light. So you look at the tzitzis, you remember the mitzvahs of Hashem, but it's not just remembering because you see something. It is because there is that godly energy in the mitzvah. So when you connect to a mitzvah, physical, actual mitzvah, that is the channel, that is the light, the pillar of light that connects the bottom and allows you to be elevated to the highest levels. Thank you all for joining today. Hashem will continue tomorrow morning, Bezrat Hashem. Any questions?